Erstklassisch mit Mischke, der musikalische Podcast des Hamburger Abendblatts.
Hallo, schönen guten Tag zu einer neuen Folge. Ich bin wieder mal in der Elbphilharmonie. Man hört es an der Akustik in der Garderobe, nehme ich an. Ich habe einen Gast, auf den ich mich schon sehr gefreut habe und sehr lange gefreut habe. Ich glaube, es ist der erste Finne, den ich hier in diesem Podcast habe, aber auf jeden Fall ist es so ziemlich der berühmteste Finne, den ich hier hatte bislang. Und es ist der Dirigent Esa-Pekka Salonen, der ist momentan hier in Hamburg. Er hat in dieser Woche die ersten Konzerte mit dem NDR-Orchester. In der nächsten Woche kommen weitere. Und falls tatsächlich noch jemand nicht weiß, wer er ist und war und was er gemacht hat, er war, glaube ich, 17 Jahre in Los Angeles Chef vom LA Phil, war dann nebenbei auch noch beim Philharmonia in London und ist jetzt seit 2020 Chefdirigent beim San Francisco Symphony Orchestra und hat hier auch im Jubiläumskonzert mitgewirkt, indirekt und direkt vom 5. Geburtstag der Elbphilharmonie, weil sein Stück Wing on Wing aufgeführt wurde, was er damals zur Eröffnung der Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles komponiert hat. Er ist also Dirigent und Komponist und was eigentlich die Reihenfolge ist, was wichtiger ist und was zuerst kommt, das werden wir alles heute klären. Wir machen das auf Englisch, weil mein Finnisch eigentlich nicht existent ist. Und ich freue mich sehr, dass das geklappt hat. So, thanks very much for being here, Esa-Pekka Salonen.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
There's nearly no rules in here, but there's one rule, because we always start with an easy question or with a not so easy question. You can pick which one you want first.
Let's do the easy one first.
The easy one, okay. Is conducting actually fun or work?
Mostly, I would say 95% of the time. I feel really, really privileged because I'm dealing with this incredible institution, which is the Symphony Orchestra. And I'm working with these musicians, the best orchestras around the globe, and I'm dealing with the repertoire. Sometimes, still, I get these almost irrational flashes of joy. You know, even when I'm studying, you know, I study a Bruckner symphony or a Stravinsky piece, and I get this sort of amazing feeling. I'm allowed to do this for a living, and I still love it. We all have good days and bad days. Sometimes, still, it happens. It happens less than earlier in my life, but I have to kind of admit that an idea I had is no good. And I'm kind of banging my head against the wall. And after a long time of head banging, I have to give up. Okay, all right, I admit this was not a good idea. And then I just reverse and change course, and that's all that is. But we all have these moments, whatever your profession is. There are the glorious moments and then the less glorious moments.
Okay. How well do you manage to split up your personality? That's the question that's not as easy. I mean, splitting up your personality in a way and your time into someone who performs music and the other guy who invents music.
That's trickier sometimes because if you think of conducting as a social phenomenon, it's intense. It's really intense. You're dealing with people all the time. You're trying to focus 100 or so musicians every day in rehearsals and in concerts. You're trying to somehow create an illusion of them voluntarily doing what they're doing, and yet you are the one who has the concept and so on. So there's a lot of social navigation in this, and it's short term. You come in, you rehearse for a few days, and then you do the concert. People clap in the best case scenario, and then on you go to the next thing. So it's very high energy, very sort of high adrenaline, and intensely social. Whereas composing is quite the opposite. It's very slow. I mean, it's really slow. I mean, it's incredibly slow. And very much not social at all. And shift is sometimes very hard for me to come down from the conducting energy to the sort of to come down from Usain Bolt to some kind of a marathon runner is like two completely different people. And also I miss when I go to my studio and it's quiet, nobody's clapping. Conductor's life is fantastic because you turn up for work and people are clapping. Composers don't get this. Actually, a friend of mine suggested that I should have a little robot made that would have a sort of motion detector. The moment I enter my studio, the robot would start applauding. But so that takes a while. The shift takes a while always, about a week and so. And the same thing, when I come out of a composing period and go and do my first rehearsal as a conductor, it feels completely impossible. How can anybody maintain this energy level and also deal with this sound that comes at you? Mm-hmm. I mean, that was actually a shock.
How loud a symphony can be?
Absolutely. I had the first time I conducted a full symphony orchestra after the first lockdown in 2020 was in Paris. There was a window when they allowed almost full symphony orchestras on stage and almost full halls and etc. in the autumn of 2020. And I conducted the Prokofiev Romeo and Julia suite. And my version of the suite starts with this Montecchi Capuletti where you have these huge loud brass chords in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And it was unbelievably loud. And I stopped and I said, that was loud. And they started laughing. Yeah, we played, it's brass, we played fortissimo. And I realized that my system had calibrated itself to be part of the silence that is the Finnish countryside, mm-hmm. where I hadn't seen many living things apart from some deer and birds and so on. So all of a sudden I'm facing this noisy thing, which made me think of what this works, romantic, massive orchestral piece must have sounded like. If you think of the Symphonie Fantastique, for instance. Mm. So most likely what those people experienced in the relatively small hall of I think it was the Conservatoire in Paris where it was premiered, it must have been the loudest noise they have ever heard in their life. Mm-hmm. Loudest man-made noise. Because there was no traffic, there was obviously no heavy metal. Nothing was amplified. I think the loudest man-made noise was either the cannons, which normal people didn't go anywhere close, and the church bells. Mm-hmm. But to have the church bells on stage in that little small hall, plus the big brass and all that, it must have been a completely shattering thing. Mm-hmm. And we forget this because these things sound pretty to us.
People were blown away back then by Beethoven symphonies as well because of the large orchestra size and because of all the things going on then. So it's relative in a way.
It is relative. I went in Paris a long time ago. I went to an exhibition which was very specific. It was the exhibition on the spaces where Mozart had his symphonies, his works performed in Paris. And there was a model of the room where the Hafner Symphony was played, maybe even premiered. It was a tiny room, mm-hmm. Like some rich person's living room. And I thought that also must have been really scary. The big 2-octave leaps and we forget that. Mm. That it was physical, and it still is. Mm.
Let's talk about Hamburg and what you're doing here. I mean, you could have picked venues all over the world where you want to go and what to conduct. Why this residency here now in Hamburg, and why these programs? You're conducting own pieces and you're conducting big ones like Symphonie Fantastique and Daphnis und Chloe, at least in parts. and you're doing Debussy as well. So why did you choose to come here? Why did you actually want to work here?
I have always felt very much at home in Hamburg. Since the very first time I came in the 80s to conduct the NDR. There's something about the city which is, it's a northern city. And the temperament is northern and people are northern. And there's something about the vibe. I find it very comfortable to be in Hamburg. And to work with the orchestra, it's a long old relationship, and I've seen already a couple of generations of musicians come and go, and of course the Elbphilharmonie is a masterpiece, and I think some 20, maybe more than 20 years ago, a series of videos were made where various conductors and managers were talking about the importance of the space where music is being performed. And I think Simon Rattle was one, and Zubin Mehta, and I think Ernest Fleischmann from Los Angeles, and I was also being interviewed. So in a very sort of marginal way, I feel that I've been part of the team.
Okay.
And now, of course, the programming here in the hall is very close to my idea of what programming should be.
I see.
And there's a wide range of things, and somehow not dealing with ghettos. Like new music and old music and everything. It's just everything exists in the same space, and I like that concept. And also, Alan Gilbert is a very good friend of mine, and I was his composer in residence in New York for 3 years, some years ago. So we worked together a lot, and so for me this is a very natural place to be.
Okay. In LA, you saw and heard the LA Phil grow and become better because of the new concert hall. You were music director from 1992 to 2009, if I remember it right. How do you think about the NDR-Orchestra now, about 5 years being here in Elbphilharmonie? How did they change for your ears or eyes or other senses? Is there progress? I mean, you know Toyota halls better than anyone, I guess, around the world. You've experienced what a hall can do to an orchestra, and what's the experience here? Is this like a déjà vu for you? Like I'm seeing and experiencing an orchestra becoming better because of a new hall and a new venue and new acoustic possibilities, or how does it feel for you?
I think the fundamental thing is that the NDR-Orchestra has all of a sudden an instrument that they don't have to fight against. I mean, the Leishalle, it was hard work because many works were actually a little too big for the space, and it was sometimes difficult to get things together, and it was just not a perfect hall for this kind of music and this kind of orchestra. This size of an orchestra, and now they have a friend in this hall, and they, in these 5 years, they have developed a confidence that they perhaps didn't have before, and there's also a certain extroverted quality to the playing that they didn't have before. It was always a very good orchestra, but now they are they're open, and they are kind of communicating, and there's this confidence, as I said. So it's amazing what a space can do to a body of musicians, and also the fact that they play for full mostly full houses, and they are the resident orchestra in this amazing building. So it's a good place to be. So they are a happy orchestra.
Would you feel able to say that one hall is better than the other, or one hall is easier to handle than the other?
They're all different in many ways, but fundamentally the same. And the challenge in the Toyota halls is that the transparency is such that even the middle voices are very, very audible, which in normal halls quite often get covered and they get muddied to the degree where you don't have to worry about them because you can't hear them. I mean, it's like, and in a hall like this, you actually hear the full spectrum, and you can hear exactly what the second clarinet is doing, and you can hear exactly what the violas are doing, etc., which makes it more challenging because everybody has to perform on a very high level. But at the same time, it's satisfying because everybody knows that
nowhere to hide.
What I do matters, and that's the worst thing for a musician when you sit there for years and years, and knowing that it doesn't really matter. Nobody gives a shit. It's like, and I have this memory of the first test of the Walt Disney Concert Hall back in LA, and we played sort of excerpts of the central repertoire, Beethoven, and etc. And there was a bass player who came to me after the first session and started crying. He was like one of the older guys, so he was very close to retiring, and he said, I've been grinding away for 35 years, and now I play this pizzicato and it resonates, and I wasted so much time. But he was really in tears. So it's a huge thing.
And now your next chapter has begun. I mean, you started your job in San Francisco during the pandemic last year, and in 2020, and I think the whole first season was just cancelled and thrown away, and that's not an ideal start in a way. And you started with the pandemic on your back, with Donald Trump being president. What was it like starting a job like this after being out of a job voluntarily for so long, because everybody in the whole world wanted you as the next music director, and then you made a choice, and then all of a sudden fate came and said, okay, pandemic.
Well, there was an added element that made it even more painful, which was that my last farewell season with the Philharmonia was also kind of decimated. So as a matter of fact, I only managed to conduct 2 concerts with them, which were my actual farewell concerts. I'm lucky that this happened. And, it was a very strange time. Because usually there's a kind of a festival opening for the new music director, and kind of festival type of programming and a lot of hullabaloo. And in this case, nothing. And it was very weird, I must say. I had Zoom meetings with the whole orchestra sometimes, and trying to kind of whip up some confidence in the future and so on, and also we were doing online stuff and so on. But the city of San Francisco is very strict with the distancing regulations and also how many people you can have in any given space at any given time. So it was very limited what we could do. But we did something. We did. Some things worked better than others, but I was very happy with some certain experiments we made. And I think what we learned in terms of how to create online content and what not to do, I think we learned quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Many conductors can't or don't conduct. You can do both, obviously. How hard is it for you to watch and hear someone else conducting something you've written? Is it quite easy to let go, or is it a pain in the ass because you sit there and think, what's he doing? Or what's she doing?
I would say, again, like 95% of my experiences have been very positive when I've heard colleagues conduct my music. And I must say, it's, for a composer, it's maybe the best thing that can happen. You realize that your piece has learned to walk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it has left home, and it doesn't need your protection anymore. So it's out in the world, and people treat it as they treat any piece of music, with certain respect, obviously, but also freedom. And I have had moments, especially in the last 10 years, when I've been sitting there thinking, okay, wow, never thought of that, but it does work, and so on. And, you know, now when I heard Alan conduct Wing Wing, which he has also done in New York earlier, I had a very sort of enjoyably distanced feeling to my piece, because it's already quite old, and I'm sitting there and listening to it, and it flows great, and I'm no longer worried about anything. It's in good hands, and it's like a very nice experience. And also, you know, I can have a glass of wine before the show, etc., which I can't do in other cases.
What about self-doubt? I mean, you have two professions to worry about. Other musicians just have to worry about, am I good enough being a violin player or piano player or a singer? You can be desperate in two ways.
That's a nice way of putting it, but absolutely. And also, there are moments when the piece is new and I'm doing the first rehearsals in the first performance, I have to make this split-second assessment. Why is it not sounding the way I thought it should sound? Did I make a mistake when I wrote this particular passage, or am I conducting it badly, or is the orchestra not playing it yet up to a standard? And there's not very much time to think, because also we don't get that much rehearsal time anymore, and those are the moments when I can, at the end of the day, be very disappointed in myself as a composer and as a conductor.
That's even worse then.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lose-lose situation.
Uh-huh.
But sometimes it can be positive on both sides. So there's no pattern.
Mm-hmm. Can you actually compose anywhere, or do you need a certain space like Mahler, who had his cabin at the lake during the summer holidays, or is it just you, a desk, a pen, and a piece of paper, and you're good to go?
I'm not that picky. I mean, I like to compose in a quiet environment and, you know, without much activity around and so on, but I don't always have the luxury, and especially when I'm against the deadline, I have to compose in between rehearsals and on airplanes and in hotels and so on, and I try to avoid it, and I, as I'm getting older, I really dislike the all-nighters.
Mm-hmm.
Even 20 years ago it was not a problem. I would pull an all-nighter and then get on with life, but now an all-nighter is not an option, sadly.
A tricky question maybe again. Is composing a sort of antidote against the fear of death? I mean, everybody wants to leave something behind, something that's there when you're gone. And maybe this urge gets bigger the longer you're working as a composer. I don't know. I don't compose. I have no idea.
That is a tricky one because, rationally speaking, I'm not too concerned about afterlife because I'm not there to witness it. And if somebody wants to play my pieces 50 years from now, that'd be great. But then again, not really my problem. So I think for me, composing, more than trying to create a little slice of immortality, which is by no means a given anyway, and we don't know what happens to this kind of culture. Everything is morphing. Symphonic music is here to stay, but we don't really know how culture as we know it is going to develop in the next 50 years, because we are witnessing the biggest change in the Western cultural history, I think, right at the moment. The sort of connectivity, neural networks, the metaverse, all that stuff. It's going to mean a change of paradigm on so many different levels. So that's another reason why I'm not worrying about post-mortem. Pre-mortem is my Gebiet. But the reason why I started composing as a kid was more like creating my own world, some kind of a sanctuary where I made the rules and I inhabited this world. And many children play these games, they create an imaginary land, a country where they, are the president or the prime minister. And so my country, my land was this music I was writing, because that was a place where I wouldn't have to compromise or adjust to anything. It was my world.
Okay, let's make a cut maybe. I just wondered, what was the longest time you've been mentally able to not conduct and to not write music? Is it so urgent and so close to your heart that you can't stand not doing one of these things for more than X days?
When the first lockdown happened, in my case from March 2020, so I had to make a very quick judgment call where I was in London, whether to go back to California or whether to go to Finland. And I decided to go to Finland, which in retrospect was the right choice. And of course, all conducting was cancelled for the foreseeable future. So that went out of the window. And I thought, okay, there's a silver lining to this. So I have all this time to sit down and compose something without worrying about deadlines and this and that. However, I was, like many other people, almost most of us, I think, kind of paralyzed because of this. Because it was a sabbatical, unquote, given to us without an end date. And somehow, for me, the idea of worrying about doubling the second harp or not as a problem was completely out of scale with the real problems, as it were. We're facing something that humankind had not been facing since the Spanish flu, and frankly, I didn't know whether I would even survive this, or whether anybody would survive this. There were all kinds of doomsday scenarios, and ranging from the Trump administration's, well, this is nothing, it's like a flu, to the sort of religious zealots saying that this is God's punishment and we are going to disappear from the planet. So I couldn't compose. So what did I do? I slept. But to answer your question, I spent about a month without dealing with music, other than, I carry a lot of music in my head, so it sort of plays from time to time, but I wasn't actively thinking of music, I wasn't actively studying, I was just existing, which was not a bad thing, I must say.
So is it a sort of physical pain you felt or a psychological pain you felt while not being able to conduct? I mean, composing could be done anyway in general. Theoretically, practically it was sort of impossible for you as well, as you mentioned, but I wonder whether you actually miss the physical experience of being on stage like someone missing his drug in a way.
I miss when I'm not conducting for longer periods, I miss the sound. I miss the experience of facing all that sound coming from a great symphony orchestra. The resonance and the pressure, sound pressure that comes out of a great orchestra, and the human energy. I miss the people. The sort of vibrant body of people, and when a symphony orchestra is perfectly in sync, it becomes a very powerful animal, I must say. So I missed that experience. The act of conducting, i.e. waving my stick in the air, is kind of useless on its own, obviously. I mean, when that is combined with the sound that comes out, then, yeah, good. But it's the sound I miss.
Mm-hmm. I've spoken to a young composer, conductor from Texas recently, Robert Trevino. I don't know whether you know him. He told me that he always gets a new score for each performance of a piece. He just does not want to repeat himself. Is this a good idea or a bad idea? So he has no marks. It's just a clean slate. He starts fresh. And he says, I don't want to know and I don't want to be remembered what I did last time with Beethoven 5 or whatever. I just want a fresh score. I just want to start from scratch.
That's one way of looking at it, for sure. Bernstein sometimes made these decisions that he, before he conducted his 200th Tchaikovsky Pathetic, he also got a new clean score and learned it, as it were, from scratch. But for me, it's more like paleontology, in the sense that there are different layers of sediment and different geological periods, and I actually like to see my markings from when I was 19 years old or something like that, and I'm like, oh wow, really? But so that the whole thing is like it sounds like a cliche, but it's a lifelong learning process, and it becomes, after a while, it becomes completely organic. So I'm no longer, when I conduct the Symphonie Fantastique or one of these things, I'm not learning the notes or learning the, instrumental detail or whatever. I know that already, but I'm learning more, less concrete things. I'm still learning and rethinking the flow, and I'm rethinking the narrative and the expression, and the things that are very difficult to define and quantize. So I wouldn't give up my old scores. Mm-hmm. I love them too much.
Mm. Since you mentioned cliches, I have two big and nasty ones for you. The first one is nobody understands contemporary music and it's ugly anyway. And the second one is classical music, as we speak, is outdated and not diverse. It's ancient, it's elitist, and it's music from dead white males.
Let's start to unpick that a bit. Contemporary music can mean lots of different things these days, I'm happy to say. Especially the younger composers are no longer stuck in the post-serial world where things were kind of expected to sound pretty ugly, and if somebody understood what the piece was about, then that was like a sellout. That was the extreme state of things. Now I think the idea of communication is back in the mix, and younger composers are again writing music that conveys something. And beauty, beauty, every era redefines beauty in different ways, but beauty is back in the mix, for sure. So I would say not all contemporary music sounds ugly, and not all of it is difficult to follow. However, a really, really good piece, I don't like to use the word masterpiece because that belongs to the second question of yours, but a really, really good piece is such where when you hear it for the first time, you already enjoy it, and when you hear it again, repeated times, you discover more and more things in it. So a really good composition doesn't reveal itself, all of its secrets at once. So there's always something to discover. And the dead white man situation, I actually do agree with the idea that the concept of masterpiece is problematic. Because first of all, a master is, by definition, in most languages, male, a man. And somehow the idea of a canon as a monolith, something that has always been there and will always be there and is immobile and finished, that's factually wrong. There's never been a set cast iron canon. It's always changing, and if you go and look at the New York Philharmonic concert programs 150 years ago, the canon was very different then, and even my generation, some of the best box office pieces, like the Franck Symphony, you never hear it anymore. It has gone out of fashion, i.e. out of the canon. And we think on the classical side that, we are not subject to the child emperor with unlimited powers, which is the fashion, the fad, the trend. like rock and pop music is. But that's not true. It's the same. We are totally in the same boat, except that our seasonal change is a bit slower than in rock and pop music. So when you hear Nirvana or Ozzy Osbourne, so you can say, okay, that's so 70s or whatever, that's so 80s, 90s. But for us also, I mean, things do change, and nobody knows what the mechanism is.
I was asking because, as far as I know, you've picked 8 people as a sort of brain trust crowd for your work in San Francisco. You picked musicians like Pekka Kuusisto and Bryce Dessner, and there's an entrepreneur there as well for artificial intelligence. So you try to expand the idea of what a symphony orchestra is about and what a symphony concert can do and what this sort of music has to take care of. How were the reactions in San Francisco and otherwise as well for not saying I play Bruckner, Brahms, Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert, Mahler, whatever, and leave me out of all the rest, but instead saying this is our world, this is the present we live in, we just can't ignore what's going on?
Well, I believe that a symphony orchestra is in service of its community. And in the States, especially, the community is the body that keeps the symphony orchestra afloat and makes it possible that it exists. And in some ways, I'm not saying that what's on stage and what's in the auditorium should be somehow demographically or socially completely in sync, but they should be in dialogue and they should really communicate in both ways. And when I started discussing taking over the San Francisco Symphony, I thought, okay, so there's this Finnish guy who's been around here, around the block, and no longer young. And how I thought that it's completely unrealistic to go and say, okay, I am going to change everything because I know everything, and this is going to be the new San Francisco Symphony. That would have been stupid. Because, okay, I have a lot of expertise in performing symphonic music and writing it and so on. So that was not the question, but the question was, where do we go from here? What does the future hold? How do I communicate with the younger, diverse audiences, and how do I reach out, and so on? And I realized that I need help. Also, to make the job more inspiring and fun for myself, to have 8 vibrant, smart, talented, groundbreaking artists in my team.
And you have these tiny companies like Apple, Google, and Facebook right in your neighborhood in San Francisco as well.
Absolutely, I do. Yeah. And the whole Silicon Valley tech community, which again, the pandemic made some of those plans impossible. But I would like to see a real symbiosis between a symphonic organization and the big tech. It's a work in progress. It hasn't happened yet.
What does big tech think about this so far?
They don't know about it yet. Well, I have been in touch with some folks from Google and some. I've been in talks with game engine designers and virtual reality companies and so on, and I'm hopeful that in a year or two I will be able to present something that would be like a opening door to a collaboration.
I've recently spoken to Peter Gelb, the chief of the Met, about this, and he was quite sure that opera performances, actual people on an actual stage, in an actual set, with a live orchestra, is never going to be out of the business. What's your take on this?
I also do believe in live performance and the power of it. Absolutely. But that doesn't exclude going into areas that are uncharted by and large. And I think that a very powerful artistic experiences can be created using the new technology, like immersive technology especially, virtual reality and augmented reality and so on, 360 sound, and these kinds of things. They are not necessarily competing with the live performance, but they are enhancing it. And in the best case scenario, we might be seeing something that we could call a new art form emerge, some kind of Gesamtkunstwerk in the truly Wagnerian sense, but now using the newest technology. I saw at the Royal Opera House, they did their first virtual reality piece last year called Currents Rising, which was a take on The Tempest. And that was directed by Nisha Jones, and it was an all-female team that put it together, including the composer and so on. And I went to see it during the pandemic, and I must say that was a really powerful experience. Kind of short, 20 minutes, and still cumbersome because of the fact that the older VR setup is such that the processing has to happen outside the headset. So there's a cable that connects you to a mainframe computer. So you need a nurse to walk you around so that you don't bang your head in the wall, and so on. So it's cumbersome, but this was really powerful. And I thought, okay, and that was the Royal Opera House, which is not exactly the sort of raving avant-garde institution. And I thought that's very clearly very promising. And also 360 sound is now readily available on certain types of headphones and even mobile phones.
So this was one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, for you to say, okay, I quit composing for now and I really actually go back being a music director, because everybody looked at you and said, what's he going to pick? Where's he going to end up after leaving Los Angeles and London afterwards? And everybody wanted you, and you always said, as far as I know, no thank you, I'd like to compose.
There were lots of reasons. But this was one of the main attractions about the Bay Area, because I thought, okay, I've been interested in this music and tech synergy for a long time, and I've done some pilot things with the Philharmonia and so on. And why not to go to the epicenter of this, which is the Bay Area and San Francisco and so on. And also, frankly, I thought it would be fun to return to California.
Mm-hmm. And that's why you didn't come to Hamburg then? Because, I mean, we have a new hall, we have a good orchestra, it's close to Finland, so ideal in a way.
In many ways, but I had family reasons, because my kids all lived in the States, and my two younger ones are in LA and so on. So also in terms of what is home, it's a little difficult to say. I mean, Finland, obviously, it's my language and my culture and my forest and my people who never say a word. But California is the closest thing to home that I have had in the last 25 years or so. Almost 30. Actually 30 years this year. So that's... all those things seem to make sense.
Mm-hmm. When you mention home and forest, do I have to imagine you as coming home to Finland in the summer and touching a tree for the first time and being happy again, and this is what you missed for months? Are you an incomplete person when you're not in Finland at least once a year? Is it that bad or that intense?
You know, it's interesting that I'm completely comfortable in many big cities in the world. In London, Paris, New York, LA, Tokyo. I'm totally comfortable. And either one of them could be home. But nature, if I go for a hike in, say, the Santa Monica Mountains, it's all very enjoyable, but everything's wrong. The trees are wrong, the birds sound wrong, the smells are wrong. It's just not right.
And people are talking too much.
Well, that too, yeah. But even if there are no people, so it's not right. And even, if I go to a park in Richmond Park in London or something like that, it's just not right. When I get to Finland, everything smells right, looks right, sounds right. And that's I guess your childhood experience of the forest, for instance, is something that defines your world. Urban experiences come later, but as a kid, you identify with the smells and sounds and views of your natural environment. So that, my ritual when I go back to Finland, to my country house, so I hit the sauna.
You
by
hate
the water.
The sauna?
I heat the sauna.
So I guess you must be the only Finn who hates going to sauna.
I heat.
You heat? Okay,
I heat it.
That's a difference.
No hate. No, I love the sauna. I love the sauna, and I heat it. I heat it, and then I sit there and look over the Gulf of Finland from the sauna window, and I feel calm and centered. And then I have a beer, and the world is a good place.
Before coming back to Finland, I just want to ask something else. Is there fear maybe of you for younger conductors or about younger conductors? I mean, just a few weeks ago, Klaus Mekele has been here, and he's done an amazing performance of Tchaikovsky's Six and Shostakovich's Six with Konzertgebouw. And he's about the age you were when you started at Philharmonia, doing Mahler 3 without any rehearsals, if I remember it right, and he's 26 now, I think. And are you looking to, are you actually watching younger conductors because you feel their breath in your neck, or is it just interest, or is it, don't you care at all, or do you have a closer look at all the Finnish conductors? What's with you and, I don't know whether competition is the right word, but colleagues in a way?
No, I'm not afraid of young generation. It actually, at this point in my life and career, I'm really interested in continuity, and I want to know that this art form that we love is going to be in good hands and so on. And also, as a Finnish conductor, there's a particular duty almost, because the relationship between the different generations of Finnish conductors has been extremely good. So my generation was, say Saraste and myself and Vanska, we were all classmates. So we were helped by the generation before us, the Paavo Beklund and Panula, and I was helped by Leif Segerstam and so on, very much. And then, we feel that we want to help the next generation, and we're in extremely good terms. And Klaus, for instance, I know him very well, and I'm a big fan of his, and I really like the idea of, he and other people like him are going to take over and keeping the flame. So there's some beauty and great consolation in the idea.
Mm-hmm. We have to come to the end, but the last question I would like to ask: what is the most beautiful sound for you besides applause and the closing of the sauna door?
There are some bird sounds that are not the obvious ones. Not the sort of singing birds necessarily, but some of the seabirds. And right in front of my house in Finland, there's a strait that is quite deep, and there's a very strong current in it. So it never freezes over properly, even if the winter has been really cold and so on, which happens kind of rarely these days. So it's always open. So when the seabirds start migrating back, so this is the only part of open water for kilometers. So they're all there, right in front of my house. And if I happen to be in Finland at that time, like March, late March, early April, it's the most expressive cacophony of like 6 or 7 different species of birds, all mating. So they're crazy anyway. And then when they're like 8 different species, the noise is, it really is delightful. And I love that sound because of the symbol. It's the symbol of rebirth. It's the symbol of spring. And also, what I especially love about it is that when I'm gone, this noise is going to be happening every March anyway. And unless we completely destroy this planet, which is unfortunately possible, it's going to be going on for millennia.
Mm-hmm. I would have expected that you'd say the most beautiful sound of all is silence.
If we classify silence as sound, yes, but I like sounds that are beyond my grasp as a professional musician. So, like birds. I'm not analyzing them. I'm not trying to organize bird sounds. I don't understand them. Because understanding is a burden. It's fun to understand something, at least to think you understand something, but with that comes conceptual thinking and analysis and organization and execution, and that can be a little boring in the long run.
So you're not only from Finland, you're also a romantic.
That was a severe accusation, but yes, you could say that.
We're done. Thank you very much. I'm really looking forward. I enjoyed this talk, and I'm looking forward to the concert. And enjoy your stay here, and come back as soon as possible, and conduct as much as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Weitere Podcasts vom Hamburger Abendblatt finden Sie auf abendblatt.de/podcast.